Just a couple of minutes now after midnight, as the anticipation is growing, Ziyanda, ahead of this crucial vote that will be taking place. Tell us about the campaign trail and what you have witnessed from the conversations that you've had with some of the electorate in America.
Well, thank you, Elgin. Well, in Georgia, it's a very interesting place to be in, just simply because of what happened in 2020, where, Donald Trump lost Georgia by the skin of his teeth by around 12,000 votes, and how there's been a lot of build up in terms of this narrative of election fraud and vote rigging. You'll recall that Donald Trump spoke out quite sharply about, in-mail voting, which closed on Saturday. You also know that in Atlanta, it's a population of, a lot of African Americans, which you would know that both candidates have been vying for all kinds of communities to get out there and vote. So already I can tell you that there's a lot of conversation around security at voting stations, in particular for those who will be working at those stations. We've spoken to the equivalent really of what would be back home, like My Vote Counts, an NPO that deals with voter education and ensuring that the electorate is represented in this country's democracy. And they also deal with cases that go to court. And they have basically confirmed that Georgia's count will be completed by tomorrow night. Of course, they won't be declared. They have until the 12th of November to do so. But certainly when the numbers start coming in, you know that some of the parties declare quite early the results. And Georgia is, of course, one of those swing states that is likely to be monitored quite closely. Now, yesterday, a few minutes ago, I just returned from a rally where J.D. Vance, who's the vice presidential candidate for the Republicans, held a rally here in Cobb County in Atlanta. And the language and the messaging is pretty much the same as that of his presidential nominee. Illegal aliens, as they call them, they will be sent home packing immediately once they make their way back into the White House. A narrative that Kamala Harris says is the revenge list that Donald Trump is seeking to mete out. Let's listen to what else J.D. Vance had to say last night.
Say a prayer for Tim Walz because he's got the toughest job in American politics. And meanwhile, I've got the easiest job in American politics. Because think about this. I don't just have to tell you about Donald Trump's plans, even though we've got a lot of great plans. I just have to talk about the record of Donald J. Trump in office. When Donald Trump was in office, inflation was at 1.5%. The dollar went as far as it's ever gone in the United States of America. When Donald J. Trump was president, wages were rising faster than they had in 40 years in the United States of America. And when Donald J. Trump was president, the border was secure and the Mexican drug cartels were on the run. That's a hell of a record to run on.
Yeah, and Ziyanda, that has been a bone of contention, looking at inflation in the United States. To a certain extent, Biden has been lauded for trying to at least help recover the economy post-COVID-19 and what had happened during the height of COVID-19 during Trump's administration. But the point, though, is still stressed that it is now more expensive to live in the United States than what it was before.
Absolutely. But I mean, the cost of living crisis isn't necessarily just isolated to the United States. It's something that was topical even for our own election back in May. And it's something that has been an issue across the globe when you look at, elections that took place across the world this year alone. I think there were over 60 elections that took place across the globe. But what's critical here, Elgin, is the language that politicians use when they go out there campaigning. And there's been a lot of talk about pushing back against misinformation and disinformation when it comes to issues of the cost of living crisis, issues when it comes to how porous the borders are, here in the United States of America. I can tell you for sure that having noted, some of the campaign adverts, what's been happening both in North Carolina, where we started off, and here in Georgia, The language and the aim, it would seem, is to really bring out the personal stories of ordinary Americans and not really drill down too hard on the policy. So you'll hear very simplistic terms like high prices with Kamala, low prices with Trump, and so it goes. And really the personal stories of women who have been affected by the overturning of Roe versus Wade in those particular states where women have not been able to get access to reproductive health care in the form of abortions or whichever way. I've just actually finished watching a rally where Oprah Winfrey was addressing a Kamala Harris rally, and she was talking about, the story of a woman who also died because she didn't have access to healthcare. So really drilling down to, this is about a vote for your democracy. And we've also seen this with other candidates from the Republican Party. Liz Cheney is one of them, who have thrown their weight behind someone like Kamala Harris. And this is why then you would have heard a lot over the last couple of days talk about this being, a momentous and historical election, because not only because of how tight and close it will be, but primarily because of the battle of ideas, if you will, that is currently taking place. So I just want us to listen to what Vance had to say when it came to the tenure of Kamala Harris, because she has been, hammered by the Republican sides, this campaign at least, for not producing, much results in her tenure as deputy president.
While she says that she's somehow going to be different, even though she can't give you the details on how, we know that Kamala Harris is more of the same. More of the same unaffordable groceries, more of the same unaffordable health care, more of the same wide open southern border, more of the same failed leadership in Washington, D.C. And I think that Michigan, we're going to vote for a change. We're going to vote to take this country in a new direction. We're going to vote for prosperity. We're going to vote for Donald J. Trump for President of the United States.
So that's J.D. Vance last night in Cobb County in Atlanta. Of course, lots of talk about what the actual role of a vice president is, but nevertheless, the canvassing is still allowed to continue. So unlike us where campaigning stops, both campaigns can still go and knock on doors, as we are now on election day, Tuesday, the 5th of November, I should say, and America will decide. In Georgia, we're hoping to have some kind of a result by the end of the night. The voting stations close at 8 p.m. And so this is about the Americans choosing who will be their next president. Aldrin.
Well, thank you so much for that, Ziyanda Ngcobo, there, joining us from one of the swing states in the United States of America, Georgia.